Good morning, and thank you for joining us. My name is Nishant Joshi, and I'm the police chief for the Alameda Police Department. 9 months ago, when I took this position, I was proud to see the work this department was putting in day after day. Prior to becoming the Alameda's police chief, this department had quietly established a cold case unit comprised of a small team of retired Alameda police officers and 2 sergeants. Their sole purpose is to bring answers and justice to victims and families of several Alameda cold cases. Today, thanks to these 3 dedicated retirees, their meticulous investigative skills, and advancements in technology, we are proud to announce major developments in the 1977 homicide of Alameda resident Richard Bischel Sr. He was a father, an Alamedan, and he served our country in the Korean War. We hope this approach can serve as a model for the rest of the country to help bring justice to the victims of over 260,000 unsolved homicides in the United States. It is far too often that we focus on the suspect of these crimes, and today we want to shift that focus to providing support for the victims impacted by these heinous acts. Today, retired Alameda police officer Lorenzo Graham will speak about the facts of what led to this pivotal day. And Richard Bischel Jr., the son of Richard Bischel Sr., who was present during this tragic incident, will speak to the life and legacy of his father.
Good morning. Thanks for being here. Let me take you back to the early morning of March 16th, 1977. The Alameda Police Department responded to the 2500 block of Lincoln Avenue for a report of a stabbing. When the officers arrived on scene, they found the victim, Richard Bischel Sr., laying on the sidewalk, bleeding, with his son sitting next to him. Mr. Bischel was transported to the local hospital where he succumbed to his injuries. Investigation showed that Mr. Bischel had been stabbed 10 times when he confronted an individual who attempted to burglarize his residence. That same year, an initial investigation identified a possible suspect. Due to limitations in DNA technology, charges could not be brought against that subject. In 2021, myself, along with retired Alameda Police Sergeant Kevin McNiff and retired Sergeant Michael Abreu, reopened the Bischel case. Our hope was to make a positive ID on the responsible suspect, and to bring answers and any possible questions from Mr. Bischel's friends, family, and especially his son. As we investigated this case, we had an opportunity to submit evidence to this company, which is Serological Research Institute, for DNA examination. Based on other circumstantial evidence and DNA confirmation, the person identified in 1977 as the primary suspect, Richard Curley Bernard, was positively identified as the individual who was responsible for the murder of Mr. Bischel Sr. Further investigation into Mr. Bernard revealed that he had been arrested and convicted for a series of Alameda burglaries, along with 2 known rapes. After this time in the same year, Mr. Bischel had committed at least over 100 burglaries from the time of 1973 to 1977. Once he was convicted, Mr. Bischel was released on parole in 1983. Mr. Bernard, thank you. He was sent to Texas, where in 1989 he was shot and killed by another individual. After a month of investigation, we presented our case to the Alameda County District Attorney's Office, who, upon review of this case in its entirety, supported our department's conclusion in this investigation. While Mr. Bernard is deceased and therefore cannot face the day in court, we have given the opportunity to provide answers to the Bernard family, to the Bishop family and the community of Alameda. This crime has a long-lasting impact on their family, especially Mr. Bishop and his son, who would like to take a moment to talk to you.
I just kind of want to say thank you to the Alameda Police Department and their cold case detectives for all their hard work. It's been a long, hard road, but I'm glad we have a final resolution to this. So, on behalf of my family, my late mother, my two younger brothers, I'd like to just say thank you to everyone. That's all I can say.
Again, I want to thank the dedicated work put forth by these 3 Alameda Police Department retirees. Their selfless decision to return to the Alameda Police Department shows their commitment to the city of Alameda and to the victims of their families. While today we are able to provide the Bishop family with the answers and allow their family to finally begin the healing process, our cold case detectives are continuing to investigate a number of other unsolved Alameda homicides. I am confident their thoughtful and thorough work will allow us to be standing at this podium again in the near future. Thank you. Be happy to take questions.
Can you tell us how many cold cases exist right now in Alameda?
I will rely on Detective.
We have
Grant.
several, well over 6 cases that we're working on.
And the DNA evidence that was submitted, what was that? What was it that you submitted? Where was it found?
Oh, just a second. Thank you. Evidence we submitted was a jacket that the suspect was wearing the night of the attack. The jacket was actually found at his residence. And as I stated earlier, the technology at that time wasn't able to recover or determine whose blood that was on that jacket. Only thing it was able to do is determine the type of blood, which was human, and if it was the same blood type as the victim. That's as far as it could go.
So to clarify, you found the victim's blood on the jacket at the suspect's home?
Yes.
I could ask a question of Mr. Driscoll. Sir, can you remind us how old you were, and as sensitively as I can ask, what do you remember? And again, just reiterate your thoughts that there is some semblance of closure today.
I was 17 at the time. I'm sorry.
That's right.
I was 17 at the time. And I'm not, what was the rest of your question?
Just what do you recall of that unfortunate day? I'm very sorry what's happened, and your thoughts as we come full circle, and you find some semblance of closure today.
Well, I was there. I remember most of it. I don't want to go into any real detail, but I am happy that we've got a final resolution to this. You know, it's kind of been on my mind for the last 45 plus years, so.
Do you have a sense of relief or closure? Or what was your reaction when they first told you?
I had actually asked them to reopen this case about 23 years ago, and thinking that with DNA technology at the time they could possibly solve it. That wasn't possible at the time, as the evidence hadn't, you know, just been dry stored, from what I understand. They didn't think they could come to any conclusion there, and it just kind of hung there for a while until they contacted me several months ago. I don't know if there's any real closure. You know, doesn't change a whole lot, but we are glad that we do have a final positive ID, and we can go from there.
Did you ever think this day would, I mean, 45 years is a long time, you know, I mean, did you ever think this day would come, or when did that hope start to fade, you know?
I didn't believe it would ever be reopened. You know, after we did this 23 years ago, I thought that was just where it would end.
How did you get word that this was coming back up?
They contacted me several months ago, told me had formed a cold case squad and that they were going to be reopening this case.
What goes through your mind at a moment like that, you know?
A little bit of disbelief, you know, wasn't quite sure what to think. I didn't know if they'd be able to go any further this time, but after speaking with them a few times, I felt confident that they'd be able to come to a conclusion.
Sir, can you tell us a little bit about your father? I know he served our country, but can you just talk a little bit about his dad?
Sure. Dad was a good man. He would bend over backwards to help people out, even strangers. I can remember him working on a fellow camper's truck all day long when we were camping many, many years ago. The guy was having trouble, and my dad, being a mechanic, spent most of his day helping this guy get his truck running. That's just the kind of person he was. You know, he grew up in Wisconsin and served in the Marine Corps during the Korean War. You know, he was wounded there. After the war, he settled here in the Bay Area. He was just a good man.
What did he do in the Korean War, and which branch?
He was a Marine.
Where at? Wisconsin?
A little town called Downing.
Did you or your family know the suspect at all?
No.
There are other families out there that probably are still waiting for some kind of resolution
Mm-hmm.
here in Alameda. What would your message be to them?
Well, there's always a possibility of solving these and, like I said, coming to a conclusion. If somebody has a case, I'd encourage them to come forward and do what they can, cooperate in any way they can. There's always that possibility. There might be just some tiny little bit of evidence or something that they have that might help. So I would encourage them to come forward.
This might be a question for detectives as well, but we hear cold cases being solved with DNA technology, 20-year-old, 25-year-old, but 45 years, it's a long time. From the police perspective and from family perspective, I guess, was there ever a shred of hope that this one would get some resolution?
I had always hoped, but I kind of thought it was going to just lay there. You know, I didn't realize, as I said before, you know, I had them open it, 23 years ago, and didn't realize that, there were advances that made it possible to, extract some viable DNA after all this time.
And for detectives and chief, how did you guys come across this concept? Did you go after, not go after, but did you follow footsteps from other departments? Did you learn something from other departments, or was this just kind of your best way of, new cold case unit trying to make a mark?
Cold case unit doing the job we were asked to do. What helped with this case is the good work the officers who originally started this back in 1977. If they hadn't done the work that they had done, it would have made our job a little bit more difficult. But we followed their lead, took the steps that was necessary, and based on the stuff they recovered and the reports they wrote, we were able to put everything together. And with the DNA technology now, we presented it back to the lab, and we got our positive results.
I'm really curious. 45 years is kind of a long time.
Mhm.
A lot of cold cases in that time too. I'm sure,
What was about this case in particular that led you to say, all right, we might have a chance at getting this one?
Without talking about other cases, is basically what was available. What made this case even more was that other cases we deal with are, could be larger. There's more details involved. This one, again, it was something that was, I guess you can say, the company itself that did the DNA lab, they were touched also by the story that Mr. Bichelle told us today. So it wasn't given any priority, but they wanted to make sure they brought back something for us, and they did.
Is this the first case this unit has solved ever since its inception?
Yep, and hopefully not the last.
Can you just clarify, you said somebody was initially identified, is it in fact the same person?
Yes.
Were all the detectives in this cold case, were you all retired homicide detectives?
We were all detectives. Not all of us were homicide detectives. Yeah.
What kind of work goes into solving a case like this from, the three of the detectives?
One, working together, working well together, a lot of time involved, a lot of detailed work, and putting the time in that is necessary. And that's what we did.